Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Parsha Shelach. This Parsha is Parsha Shelach, famous story of the Meraglim, the spies who messed up and went to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and they reported back negatively, and panic broke out, and the Yidden thought they wouldn't be able to conquer the land. And of course, Hashem punished them and the Bnei Yisrael to remain in the Midbar, to remain in the desert for 40 years. So I want to begin just with an interesting thing that I saw in one of the Mefarshim on the Chumash. The story of the spies actually told twice. It's told in this week's Parsha, that's when it actually happens. And then it's told later on in Devarim, when Moshe Rabbeinu is giving Musar, he's admonishing the Jewish people before they go into the land of Israel, reminding them of the things they did wrong, urging them to learn from their mistakes and not do these things in the future, and so on and so forth. But the way it's told there in Devarim, it's actually told differently than it's told here. In this week's Parsha, it says, "Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe Leimer." Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu saying, "Shlach lecha anoshim," send for you spies, people. In other words, it says it's a commandment from Hashem. It's a kind of interesting commandment because it says, doesn't say like you should send spies. It says shlach lecha. If you want, you can send. It's almost permission rather than a command. According to Rashi says that Hashem said, "You know what? I'm not sure that I really wanted to do this, but if you want, then you can. If you agree, if you want, then you can do it." Right? In Devarim, it says it a bit differently. In Devarim, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, "Vatikrevun elai kulchem." You all came to me and you said, let's send people to spy out the land. In other words, it doesn't say, it says that they asked for it. Whereas this week's Parsha, it sort of seems to say that it was a command or instruction or guidance from Hashem. It doesn't say that there was a request from the Jewish people before. But the Mefarshim explain, and the Gemara and the Gemaral talks about it, that the two parshas actually complement each other. What happened was like this. When they came to him, the obvious implication was, what seemed to be what they were saying, was let's send spies. Like always, any war you have to send spies. And the truth is, Yehoshua sent spies, Moshe Rabbeinu sent spies in the desert to Edom. It's a normal thing. It's a normal thing to do. It's not a bad request. However, Hashem understood really what their request was all about. Hashem really understood their request as a lack of bitachon. Not that they were confident they were able to conquer the land. They just wanted to know the best way of doing it. So therefore, let's send the spies. Hashem really understood really what they were talking about. They were talking about they were scared to go. They were panicked. They didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael. They thought it was too hard. They had lacked the appropriate emunah and bitachon, and that became evident, obviously, when they came back, right? Which, of course, by the way, answers a regular question. It answers a question, a famous question. The Bavitcher Rebbe talks about this a lot, about what was their avera, why was Hashem so angry with them? They went to Eretz Yisrael, they did what they were told. Our Parsha says that it was a command. Hashem said, "Shlach lecha anoshim." They went, and they reported back, and it wasn't so not accurate. It was pretty accurate what they reported. It was a big land. There were giants there. There were 45 cities there. The food was huge. So all the things that they reported was pretty accurate. But of course, the answer is no. Because had they gone just to say, not if we can conquer the land, but how we can conquer the land, then it would have been appropriate. But they didn't go that way. They actually went with the intention to find something wrong and to come and cast doubt whether it would be possible to conquer the land at all. That's the problem. And therefore, they were very rigid in their thinking. And therefore, they went with that plan. And that was their original plan. So what happened actually was that that the people came to Moshe Rabbeinu first. Like it says in Devarim. You came and you asked me, let's send spies. What it sounded like was a legitimate request. Hashem then said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlach lecha, if you want to send, go ahead. In other words, the reason that the commandment is so obscure, it's in a different style. It's like if you want to send, you can send. The storyline is what it says in our parsha. Hashem did come to Moshe Rabbeinu, but he came after the Redeem had already come. And he came to them because the main thing in this parsha is the story. The story that Hashem is saying, permission is granted, you could send, and let's hope it works out okay. But in Devarim, it was different. In Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu was giving Musar. He was saying, no, the problem started because how you really came. It sounded good. It sounded you wanted just legitimately to strategize and to send spies, but it became evident after what your real intention was, and therefore I'm giving you Musar now, I'm reprimanding you for those ill intentions and to learn from your mistakes. Okay, which of course goes to the heart of the lesson that when Hashem promises us something, or Hashem tells us we can do a mitzvah, or Hashem gives us a mission, the default position has to be, of course we can do it. Absolutely we can do it. Maybe we need to strategize how we do it, but there's no question that it's possible to do. If Hashem wants it done, it can be done. I think, of course, this is very connected to what's going on now. We have to believe, of course, obviously we need strategy, we need the army, which is so fantastic and so on, but we have to have bitocha and emunah. Hashem gave us the land, it's eternal, and it will be okay, and we have to have that conviction and that confidence. Okay. I want to share with you something that's a bit different. It's got a little bit to do with the Meraglim as well, but it's interesting that the Parsha begins with the story of the Meraglim, and it ends with the Parsha of Tzitzis, the mitzvah of Tzitzis. And in the mitzvah of Tzitzis, it says that if you have 4 corners, you have to put on Tzitzis, and then it says in the Parsha, Ure isem oisoi, and you should look at the Tzitzis, and you should remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem. Okay? So Rashi says, what does that mean? It means because the gematria of tzitzis is 600, and then you look at the 8 strings and the 5 knots, it makes 613. So when you look at the tzitzis, you're remembering Hashem, you're remembering all the mitzvahs of Hashem, Taryag, 613. The other thing we have to understand, look, what's the perspective? What's the idea behind this? Second of all, also, what does it mean that we know that in the Parsha of Tzitzis, we read it at night as well, even though night's not really the time of Tzitzis, but we read it because it's got also the mitzvah of remembering Mitzrayim, remembering the exodus from Egypt, and we have to remember that every day, morning and evening, and therefore we have the Parsha that we say it even at night. The question is, Mitzrayim is mentioned so many times in the Torah. Why specifically did Hashem put the mitzvah of remembering the going out of Mitzrayim together with the mitzvah of tzitzis in the same paragraph? What's the idea? So there's a sefer that I've quoted recently. His name is Sorei Alofim, and he shares a very beautiful idea. The idea goes like this. He talks about the idea of choshech and oir, darkness and light. What is darkness and what is light? So he defines darkness in a very interesting way, where we find by the 10 plagues, when Hashem brought darkness upon the Egyptians, it says, Lo yira'u ish es ochiv. No person was able to see the other. I think the Sfas Emes already talks about this. That symbolically, that what that teaches us is that, spiritually speaking at least, the definition of darkness is when a person is so self-absorbed that they're not able to see something beyond themselves. They're not able to see someone beyond themselves, not able to see an idea beyond themselves. They're too busy with themselves, not able to see other people, and therefore ultimately they're not able to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not able to see Hashem properly, not able to make room for another. What is oil? What is light, therefore? A light is the opposite of darkness. Light means that you're able to see another, that you have clarity. You're able to see further than yourself. You're able to see something higher, different to yourself, another person, Hashem, Torah, mitzvahs. You're able to see something that you need to do, maybe that you didn't think was what you need to do. You might think you need to do a certain thing, and it might be even with good intentions, it might be even mitzvah related, but you're not able to see the bigger picture. You're not able to see, no, that's not what I need to do. I need to do something else. Now, this idea is hinted in Tzitzis. Why is it hinted in Tzitzis? Because Hashem tells us, when you wear a garment, what's a garment? A garment is what we wear around ourselves. So the garment itself is symbolic of looking at ourselves, dressing ourselves, wrapping ourselves. That's almost a little bit like the idea of being self-absorbed. But Hashem says if you have a 4-cornered garment, you must put tzitzis. the fringes that you put, the tzitzis that you put, go beyond the beggar. They go beyond the garment. In other words, the idea of the tzitzis is that you're able to see beyond yourself because it goes beyond the garment that you're wearing. And therefore Hashem says, when you look at the tzitzis, you'll remember Hashem. Why? You'll remember all the mitzvahs, because when you look at the tzitzis, you'll remember not to be self-absorbed. You'll remember to go beyond yourself, and ultimately beyond yourself to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to connect to Hashem himself and his mitzvahs and his Torah, which fits in very beautiful to two amazing things. It fits in to the fact that we learn in the Gemara that Laila lavs man tzitzis. The nighttime is not a time to wear tzitzis. What is nighttime? It's darkness. Darkness is when you can't see beyond yourself. Tzitzis is a mitzvah for the daytime, because the whole point of tzitzis is to see beyond yourself, and through that, you remember the mitzvahs. Interestingly enough, the Gemara says, in the morning when you read Shema by daytime, what is daytime? What is light? Daytime, it says it's light enough sheyakir es chaver, that you should be able to recognize someone else in the dark. Someone that you know, someone that's your friend, you should be able to recognize him and identify him. Same idea. Light is about recognizing something else or someone else. So therefore, that's the idea of tzitzis. And that's why going out of Mitzrayim is mentioned dafka in the mitzvah of tzitzis. What is going out of Mitzrayim? The whole idea of Mitzrayim is not to be in a prison, not to be incarcerated within yourself, to see beyond yourself. The Yidden were redeemed from Mitzrayim so they'll be able to reach the Torah. The whole goal of Yetzias Mitzrayim was to be able to come to Har Sinai and receive the Torah. In other words, the whole idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim is personal freedom, personal exodus, going beyond yourself. The same idea of tzitzis. And it's only when we remember going out of Mitzrayim each day that we're able to go beyond ourselves, not be self-absorbed, and to connect to Hashem in the proper way. Otherwise, we can't really do that, which connects back to the beginning of the Parsha. And that's why the beginning of the Parsha, the story of the Meraglim, and the end of the Parsha is about tzitzis and about going out of Mitzrayim. The Rashi tells us, and he doesn't say this, but I'm just adding this in. Rashi says at the beginning of the Parsha that Anoshim, they were actually good people. The Meraglim were good people. But they got stuck in themselves. They got stuck in their own view. They had a view, which according to many Sfarim was actually a holy view, that they were scared for the Yidden to go into Eretz Yisrael because they'd have to plow and they'd have to work the fields and they'll be too connected to Gashmias. And they decided that, you know what, it's better for the Jews to remain in the Midbar, to be protected by the Anane HaKoved, to be fed by the Mun. It'll be much better for them, spiritually speaking. But that was their view. And they got stuck in themselves, and the result was a disaster. They needed to see what Hashem's plan is. They might have certain views, they might have certain opinions, and opinions might be well-intended, but you need to see beyond yourself. You have to ask yourself, that's all good what I think, but what does Hashem want? And Hashem wanted, the tachlis was for us to go into Eretz Yisrael and to serve Hashem in Eretz Yisrael with the Beis HaMikdash and so on and so forth. So that is the connection between the beginning of the Parsha and the end of the Parsha. It's interesting, of course, that this Parsha is all about Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is on our minds this week in a very, very emphasized way. And let me just conclude by, of course, saying that in Mitzvah Hashem, it's going to be amazing. It'll be a tremendous victory. And ultimately, Mashiach will come and we'll all be able to go to Eretz Yisrael properly, which will happen in Mitzvah Hashem, in Heira B'Yomeinu. Have a good week, everyone, and ultimately a good Shabbos. Kol Tov.